more empathy. And in this world where we're seeing a wave of extremism across the globe and a lot of challenges and divisions and alienation, the power of empathy and kindness to connect humanity is all the more important. And we've had 12 years of different experiments for how to try to inspire kindness, because the trick is that kindness is magical because it's authentic. Right. And when you're authentically kind to another person, you create happiness because you feel better about helping someone and they feel better they got helped. But it has to be authentic. So in trying to incentivize it, we cannot sully it by making it commercial or crass. So we've had a lot of different things we've played with. You can go to our website, kindsnacks.com. There's a foundation page, and it goes deep into the kind movement, into the different initiatives we have, kind causes, kind awesome cards, kind people. Kind people is our latest and most ambitious effort, where we just recently announced $1.1 million in grant for people who never have been seeking fame. Right. Some of them nobody had ever heard of before publicly in terms of getting that spotlight, and they are really, really amazing people that deserve both the tools to continue leveraging their work, but also to be known, because it's just so inspiring and energizing. One of my team members called me crying, and I thought I had done something wrong, and she's like, "Thank you so much for making this happen, because I got to meet this woman that goes into jails and meets people who have been forgotten by our society and who have been maybe 20, 30 years in jail, and who did things really, really ugly, horrible things, but who have really evolved and come to terms with their crimes and are coming back into society, and she just gives them hope and energy and connects with them as human beings. And the recidivism rate is close to zero at that prison, because she just envelops them in humanity and connects them. And it's just one example of many of people that are really every day just being good human beings and making results.
And by the way, getting recidivism down in prisons is one of the biggest issues we have facing American prisons today. Our own Rikers Island here in New York City, for example, recidivism is over 50%. The fact that you can eliminate it through an act of kindness,
of humanity, helping people know that they're not alone and that we care about them. But it's kindness is empathy is such a powerful glue that I think we have for the last many years been neglecting, and we need to make it front of mind. We need to teach our kids, we need to teach ourselves how to listen to the other. Part of the reason we're not understanding each other, part of the reason America is divided into two, is that if you think you have your perspective and the other side has a different one, we have such difficulty listening to the other and understanding the other's perspective and understanding where they're coming from. And forget about that in America, look at it in the world, look at terrorism and extremism. And, you need to fight terrorism with force and obliterate people that are terrorists or criminals, but that is not enough. The ideology of hatred espoused by them needs to be countered with an ideology, and that ideology is kindness, that ideology is empathy, that ideology is helping us recognize that we as human beings have a shared future.
Well, it's interesting, and I think once people connect more with each other, and even talk more with each other, they understand that. I'll give you a quick example. I met a woman who lived in Saudi Arabia who had never heard Western music, but she had heard, she grew up in a very conservative environment and heard that the West was really the enemy. And then one day, she heard a Backstreet Boys song. It was somehow snuck into the country, and she said, "How can this be evil?" Now, some of you may not like the Backstreet Boys, may disagree, but the principle being that it changed her entire thinking, and it was just by hearing one piece of music.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes when I talk about this work, people are like, okay, whatever, goody two shoes. No, but this is important, the fight against terror and activity, because when you get the Saudis to want to share their story, and you get the Israelis and the Egyptians and the Turks and the Palestinians and the Chinese and the Americans to all open up and tell us how they think we have something in common, it helps us build that cohesiveness that we need to defeat forces of extremism.
Well, that's something you've been involved in your whole life, though, which I find interesting. I think that's sort of the arc and the narrative thread of your life has been about acts of kindness, even in the worst environments. The Holocaust, for example, what your father went through, he was saved by an act of kindness by a German soldier, and that soldier most likely risked his life and just by giving him a potato.
Yeah, well, that was one of several stories that my dad would tell us when we were little kids. He also would tell us about the horrible stuff he went through and about why humans would unleash that behavior upon other humans. It's very hard to reconcile for a 9-year-old kid when I was hearing it, to the point that my mom once told him, Roman, stop telling him about this stuff. Why does he need to be hearing this stuff? And he said, he's 9 years old and he needs to hear it. I was 9 years old when I needed to live through it. Mm-hmm. But with all that stuff, he also reminded himself and us about how he was saved by kindness from that German soldier that threw a potato at his feet, but also from American soldiers that flew or traveled thousands of miles from their homes, risked their lives to rescue people they had never met, and many other incidents. And I do think the common thread in all the business ventures and social ventures that I've started is trying to find creative ways to build bridges with people to prevent what happened to my dad from happening again. We're kind of, at some level, failing miserably because you see a lot of this stuff going on, and it's like, do we not learn from it?
Well, I think that's what a lot of people are worried about. And speaking of that, I'll get into that. You sent a profound email out to this company, to your team, the day after election. That actually was 4 o'clock in the morning, I think. Yeah. But you sent out an email and I got a copy of it. I know it's been shared. Really profound. I wondered if you could just talk about your feelings after the election. And you talk a lot about uniting people and bringing people together. How do you bring people together in an environment where the other side is basically the enemy? And then you're saying to people, well, all right, the election's over, now we're all, we just dust off what happened on the campaign trail? Is it just theater?
No, it's a very complex set of feelings even for me, because there's things that concern me greatly about the future of our nation. And the one thing that I noticed even before the election was announced was that we are so polarized. There's about half of America, from the people that voted, about half voted one day and about half voted the other way. And partly because of the way politicians speak louder.
You speak louder than telling us.
Okay, we're going to talk louder.
We'll talk louder. Maybe we bring the camera closer
Should we
to
come
us?
closer?
We'll move a little closer.
Partly
We have to listen to the audience.
Partly.
By the way, ask questions too. We're going to take your questions too today, I meant to add. So fire those away too.
Partly because of the way politics works, where they really try to dehumanize the other side, but partly also because of a lot of things that happened during this election that really alienated and divided us, and there was a lot of actions that I think are not appropriate, to say it politely.
Sure.
I have great difficulty understanding some positions on the other side, but some of my family members and some of my team members have an ideology where they voted differently from me, and I know that they are among the most amazing people in the world. And so there's a big gap between what I know to be true, which is that America is fundamentally an amazing country, and what we've basically been programmed to think that they have that thought differently from us must be evil incarnate. And it's a big challenge we need to face, the echo chambers that happen on Facebook and on social digital media, where you're just getting fed the philosophy that you and your friends believe in, and people have gotten too used to use data not to inform their beliefs, but to affirm their beliefs. Yeah. They're just trying to hear what they want to hear, and it's very dangerous if we live in these bubbles and think we're right, the other side is wrong. No side is right. Both liberal and conservative movements can learn from each other if they only were to be comfortable taking facts, to sometimes be comfortable challenge themselves. Ask yourself this question: when was the last time that you had a perspective at some political issue, and then some facts or data points made you think, wow, maybe I was wrong? I bet you that if you do this exercise and then everybody listens, it's almost never that this happens, and it's very dangerous that we become so inflexible in our ability to really listen to the other side, because the truth is not black or white. There's a lot of gray. We live in the gray, and we need to be comfortable listening to others for us to figure that stuff out. But it is complex because you don't want to forget things that are inappropriate, and you want to protect those values that you care a lot about, including empathy and kindness, but you do need to try to find a way to listen more to each other.
Well, the day after the election day, not at 4:30 in the morning, but later in the day, the first thing that I did was I emailed the friends of mine who voted for Trump, and I congratulated them. And then I knew some people who worked in the campaign, and I reached out to them too. And it was partly cathartic, perhaps, but it was also I thought it was important to do because we were at on different sides. But at the end, what unites us has to be stronger, because democracy is fragile. It's not a given, and I thought it was important to do something like that, and I know other people did too.
Yeah, I think. Is there some?
We have a question if you.
Sure, we have a question. Our executive producer Jeffrey here has a question for us. Go ahead.
So Arturo asks, what's the name of the book behind the glass, and what is it about?
The book. Oh.
This book is called Do the Kind Thing. Thank you, Arturo, for asking. It's a book I wrote, became a New York Times bestseller, and what I like about it is that I'm very comfortable sharing my mistakes, and I'm very proud of my mistakes because I really can connect a lot of things that I did wrong in my first company to the successes that Kind had. And so the book is structured with 10 pillars or principles that made Kind become one of the fastest growing companies in America, and we went from nothing to $1 billion retail brand, and BCG named us 2 years in a row the fastest growing CPG company for companies between 100 million and $1 billion in sales. And I can trace a lot of our momentum to preventing the same errors that I made in my first 10 years when I first started my first company, Peaceworks, and I was a confused Mexican Jewish lawyer trying to get Arabs and Israelis to work together. And that company's still there. It's a beautiful company, but practically I was expanding too quickly, or I was lacking discipline, strategy, or I was making mistakes of every kind. And in the book I talk about the financial aspects, I talk about the strategy, about new product development, about marketing. Really, through all the values, I try to connect both through a chronological story, but also through the different disciplines, lessons that we learned that are serving us very well at Kind.
But the other thing, Arturo, which I think is important to note is when you started, and you said this, you kind of winged it. You really didn't know what you were doing, and in a way that was a good thing. You talk about driving your car down Broadway and going from store to store, filling orders yourself. I mean, people don't sometimes take that kind of work for granted, but you didn't. But it was important in what you were just going to figure it out, right?
Yeah, when I started, chapter 2 in the book is about purpose, and connected to your topic today, we were talking earlier about kindness and why is that connected to business. And I actually don't believe, there's a lot of talk today about how purpose helps you sell products. I think that's BS. I don't believe that people buy products because of their purpose. I think they buy them because products or services are best in class. Like in the case of a Kind bar, it's the most delicious and the most nutritious. The number one ingredient in every one of our products is a nutritionally dense, nutritionally rich, high quality product. And that's why people buy the product, because it's delicious and made with nutritionally rich foods. But the reason why purpose is important is, first of all, because it gives you that grit to not give up. Because when you are going door by door and getting rejection, but there's something bigger than you that's fueling you, it helps you have that staying power. It attracts great talent of people that believe in greater stuff. And it also opens doors for people that really, really are rooting for you, and does create loyalty. So there's a lot of values to it, but the most important value is it gives you meaning. It's something that I don't think I was placed in this world to make money. I was placed in this world to build those bridges. And what I love about business is that it's scalable and sustainable. Market forces can help you impact things more widely and sustainably if you're able to authentically channel them in a positive way. Now, I do a lot of non-profit work also, because not everything can be solved through business.
Sure.
But when you're able to use market forces, I think it's very exciting.
Something I think is interesting for the entrepreneurs listening to us is your ability to go out there and just sort of figure it out. And everyone can have a plan, but like Mike Tyson says, when you get punched in the face, your plan goes awry. And as entrepreneurs, we get punched in the face, we get punched in the stomach, you get punched there too. I think it's important many times.
And I think it's okay to know that you will get punched in ways that are very, very
You have
painful.
to.
And it's okay to get depressed. It's okay to have days where you cry. I remember in my early days, they were very tough. And interestingly, looking back, when I wrote the book and I shared what I went through in the first 10 years before Kind was launched, a lot of my friends said, wow, I didn't know how hard it was. And first of all, I think I was not reaching out. I didn't want to make my parents worry. They already were worried enough that their nice Jewish lawyer's son was ferreting sun-dried tomato spreads in the streets of New York. But also just, I don't know if I felt embarrassed or I didn't reach out enough to my friends. But also, I didn't know better, which was your point earlier. I just was doing it, and I didn't have a comparison point. I so believed in our mission that I just kept going. And in some ways, it's good when you are naive and you're just going for what you believe in, and you don't realize that you're actually having a harder time getting there.
Right. You have another question?
Well, yeah, we have another question.
Let's
the
hear it.
question is, do you need big money to start a business?
That's a great question.
No, you don't. Money is very dangerous also at the beginning of a business. There are certain businesses where you need millions and hundreds of millions, and you've seen it with some of these technology companies. But a lot of CPG companies get started. I started my company with $10,000, and then after a couple of years, I got a $100,000 loan from my dad that helped me enormously. And I know not everybody has the ability to do that, but I was so proud when I was able to pay it back only a couple of years later. But what I did is I just bootstrapped. And I talk about it in the book. I talk about a lot of bootstrapping techniques I used, or I didn't even know the term bootstrapping. But I was like just surviving. But not having money in the early years forces you to be resourceful, forces you to not be wasteful, forces you to have very tight controls on inventory, on accounts receivable, and everything. So you absolutely can start a business with little money. In fact, and I talk about it in the book, when is the right time to get investors in? It's better for you if you figure out the model and get out the things, and you get money once you want to scale up. Once you figure out that your product, like in the Kind's case, 9 out of 10 people that try a Kind bar become Kindaholics and then become ambassadors and recommend it to others. And the danger of not having enough money is that I ended up also creating not just a resourceful culture, but a scarcity culture where we didn't invest at the right time. And so that you have to find the right balance. You don't want to waste, but you also don't want to miss opportunities. Our sampling budget before I got investors in a meaningful way was $800. And I used to even complain to my handful of team members, why are we spending $800 on samples? Because I saw it as a cost center rather than an investment. And the first year we brought investors, we spent $800,000 sampling, and our growth just started accelerating. And today we spend over $20 million in field marketing efforts to give free product to people, because it's the best way for people to try our product.
Could you say the reverse, that if you had taken on big money on day one, that the company may not have succeeded?
I mean, you don't know what would have happened then, but for sure would have made mistakes. Maybe would have scaled up faster, maybe would have just wasted the money. It depends on how you execute on it, but you can argue that we could have grown faster if we started a year earlier, getting investors or something. But if I was advising a friend of mine, I would see if you can bootstrap like crazy and raise either just friends and family, very, very little at the beginning, to just figure out your model, and if you're creating a product or a service, perfect it to the point that people are really, really satisfied day in, day out, and they really like it. And at that point, when you want to scale up, start bringing in investors, I think that's kind of the sweet spot. But you know, in some models and in some businesses, that doesn't work, because you might need a lot of capital for a particular type of business, or you might need a lot of resources upfront. So depending on the context, my advice might not make sense. But if you're able to tinker with a product or service without too much money burning your pockets, you're better off, because you're going to dilute yourself less, because otherwise you're going to be selling a lot of the company up front.
And it's easier when investors are coming to you and they've seen a track record, as opposed to you going to them.
Every time,
totally different.
Same with customers. When they want your product and they're knocking on your door, it's much easier than when you're trying to convince them. And same with investors. Big
difference. And we're almost out of time. Are there any other questions out there? Fire them away now. What I wanted to ask then lastly is, so kindness is often in business is almost a negative. Empathy is a negative. It's, the corporate world can be very harsh and cold, and you've turned that around entirely.
I believe very firmly that we're really missing the mark here. In culture, I guess I said earlier, born in Mexico, confused Mexican-American Jew, and the Latin Jewish culture, we're more comfortable kissing each other, hugging our children. Sometimes it's like not manly, and people associate kindness with weakness. And I just don't see it that way. It takes an enormous amount of strength. You need to be very comfortable with yourself, to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and to be able to think of the other person's interest. And you develop the empathy skills to do that. You can not just make this a better world, but you can create value for yourself, because business people fundamentally have the ability to understand the other side and then create. The better business people are able to make the pie bigger by thinking of the other person's interest and come up with creative mechanisms to create value. So if you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, you're able to do better. And kindness takes enormous amount of strength, particularly when it's needed most. Like when you're feeling defensive or aggrieved or threatened, it takes so much strength to think about the other side. It might be in a legal battle where you need to find a way to listen to the person's perspective to be able to find a way to not have to sue them and to resolve the issue.
Right.
It might be at home when you get into a fight with the person you love the most. Think about it. If it's hard enough when you get into a fight with the person to love the most, to understand them, how much harder is when you're in the context of a conflict, when you're dealing with the enemies and you feel an existentialist threat. But if you're not able to understand their perspective, you might leave on the table opportunities without sacrificing your interests to solve the conflict in a more effective way than just to killing each other.
And that goes to your whole culture here, how you work with your team in here as well, right? I mean, the
Right.
whole culture of kindness is based on those principles.
Yeah, and I think it is a very important. Yesterday we had our holiday party for the people that live in the tri-state area. We had 385 people. It was really cool. That morning, walking around was the guy that for 20 some years, Joseph Thorne has been installing our phone lines, and I was just reflecting. I mean, we've gone from like a handful of people to counting part-time over 600 team members, kind team members. And one of the secret sauces that we have is, I think, that level of empathy and commitment to one another. There is no me, there's really a we culture where really we're all working together. You really don't have jerks just thinking about themselves or about how to get credit. Everybody's working together towards a unified goal, and I think it makes a huge difference. I think it's a big competitive advantage that we're all united as a family. And by the way, it's the same thing for our country, America. We do need to find a way to unite and to build those bridges, and without sacrificing your values,
Right.
there must be a better way to.
And I'll end on this. Ronald Reagan had said when he was president that one way to bring about world peace would be if aliens would attack. Overnight, our humanity would be exposed, and we would all be unified.
Or if you watch Game of Thrones, the White Walkers. You watch Game of Thrones?
Yes, of course.
It's like all these people are killing each other. In the meantime, we have a real threat coming, and this is real.
Right.
Climate change is real. Nuclear proliferation, nuclear scarcity, resource scarcity, extremism, terrorism, xenophobia, maladies, Zika virus, and all the things that could come. We need to find a way to think about our shared future.
And I like your solution much better. It doesn't require aliens coming in. So I think if we all think about the world, our business, our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives in that way, through that lens, that we'll be better off.
Thinking how to pursue two seemingly incompatible goals at the same time is what helped create a kind bar that was both delicious and helpful, create a model that was both socially impactful and economically sustainable, where you can use market forces to do good and do well. And if it's authentic, it really can be an important element of how to improve society.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you coming on the program.
Guys.
Thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you found this informative, and I hope you share with friends. Hope you got some good information out of this, and we'll see you again soon on the Business of Good Live. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.